in Jurassic World Rebirth, we're introduced to this T-Rex, and you might have noticed something here. This T-Rex is the biggest, bulkiest T-Rex we've ever seen on our screens. Just look at the size of it. Official lore will actively have us downplay its full capabilities though, but today we're going to expose the truth on Rebirth's T-Rex, and is it actually the strongest T-Rex in the franchise? And if so, how is that possible? What is it made of? Why hasn't it fought the D-Rex? Or has it? Get ready to challenge everything you thought you knew about Jurassic, because this creature, some of the official sources are even hesitant to reveal. And immediately I'd like to show you something. The T-Rex's lower jaw. Notice that like circular bulbous type bone sticking out? This scale-like plate on its lower jaw is actually called a subtympanic plate. And this T-Rex, which is called Ember, is the only T-Rex in the entirety of the franchise to have this plate. This obviously gives it a very distinct look, but means this T-Rex's genetic makeup is different to every other T-Rex we've seen. I'll come back to the genetic makeup later because there's something else going on here. Ember's size compared to the other T-Rexes. Now the official charts try and tell us that they're roughly the same size, but what we actually see on screen is a completely different story. I mean, the chart itself is not reflective of what we see in the movie. The Rebirth's Rex head is literally the size of a truck in a few shots. And this is down to the director Gareth Edwards having that effect on his movies. He literally upscales everything. Just look at Godzilla. This has many fans believing that this T-Rex we see in Rebirth is the strongest Rex yet, which just makes Rexy fans really salty in my opinion. But we can't argue with what we see on screen. It is heavier, bigger, bulkier, it has shorter forearms, and that's not even getting into the bite force yet. You see, it's quite clear this T-Rex is made up of different genome compared to the other Rexes, because that plate we see on its lower jaw is similar to another animal, and that is an iguana. Now, at nowhere in the official sources does it say that iguana DNA has been used, but clearly in this T-Rex, it has. Now this has huge implications for the lore, and I mean huge. I mean, it tells us that InGen were messing around with dinosaur DNA strands, just like the frogs, but this time with reptiles. This further builds into the story in Rebirth that the mutants are literally just that. Spliced dinosaurs with different types of DNA. They were literally experimenting. Because we're also missing something here. Look at the D-Rex. It also has that circle-like plate, meaning they did the same thing with the D-Rex. Whatever DNA they used in the D-Rex, they tried to do the same in the T-Rex. And this mystery just gets bigger and bigger. Could it mean then that InGen, rather than using the frog DNA, decided to swap that out for the iguana DNA, potentially to stop them from changing sex and breeding perhaps? Was this their way of trying to correct their previous mistake? We already know D-Rex wasn't the first prototype to a T-Rex. That just doesn't make sense. They already had Rexy in 1993. The D-Rex was from 2010. They were experimenting with something else, and that is exactly it. They were experimenting with the iguanodon DNA, not the frog. But how does that make the Jurassic World Rebirth T-Rex the strongest ever? And another question, why do we never see it fight or seemingly be afraid of the D-Rex? Now, I'll come back to that question in a second. First, let's talk about how it makes it the strongest. Well, in swapping out the frog DNA for the iguana, obviously you have reptile-like skin rather than the leathery skin of the frog. So not only is this T-Rex potentially the biggest one yet, the bulkiest one yet, completely overshadowing Rexy, it now potentially has even harder skin. If this Rex went one-on-one with another Rex from one of the other parks, I believe it'd absolutely decimate it. The sheer bite force and the size of the head alone would do some serious damage. But then this started to get me thinking, if this is the strongest T-Rex yet, we've never actually seen it in action. Why is that? It's in close proximity to the D-Rex, which would presumably be the alpha predator of the island, right? If that was the case, you'd be quite fearful being in another predator's vicinity. I mean, the D-Rex is literally just down the river. So why then do we see it sleeping out in broad daylight, completely uncovered, not hidden in some cave or under the canopy in its own nest, just leisurely taking a nap in the day, not fearful of being ambushed or attacked by the D-Rex at all? Could this mean that the T-Rex was the alpha predator of the island, not the D-Rex? Now, whoa. Let's look at this logically. There was an entire scene which was meant to be in the movie which had the T-Rex fight the D-Rex, but they decided to cut that out because it'd be too Jurassic Worldy, you know, like they did with the Indominus and the Mosasaurus coming out and grabbing it, and exactly the same thing in Dominion where they had Rexy team up with the Tyrannosaurus. They decided against that, which was a good choice in my opinion. But what it does tell us is that there were plans for these two to clash, but who would be the victor? Now, before we get into a battle analysis, I think there's a huge part at play here. The two territories. Now, the Rex could quite easily roam the island. It might not have a nest at this point, and could easily roam the island leisurely free because the D-Rex seems to be drawn to light. And the only place with light on the island is this initial enclosure. And that's the only place we see the D-Rex in the entirety of the movie. We don't see it out in the island. We don't see it hunting. It literally seems to be drawn to the center of the island and the facility because of the lights. Sure, you can say it ventures out a little bit for the sake of sustenance and food, but primarily doesn't leave the safety of the center of the island and them lights. This would explain why the T-Rex seems unthreatened in its environment. I mean, there's only one D-Rex. The likelihood of it coming into contact with that is extremely limited, and everything else it comes into contact with, it could quite easily take care of. You're forgetting this is the biggest T-Rex in the franchise. One bite in mutants, one bite in velociraptors, anything else out in the open, potentially even taking on one of them tyrannosaurs we have. That would be difficult, but there's plenty of them and would sustain the Rex for a while. Perhaps it has come into contact with the D-Rex when the Rex was exploring the island and it saw it at the facility. Now, if that was the case, the D-Rex in my eyes would probably be the victor. I mean, it's got use of its arms, its jaw, which is absolutely massive. It'd be able to grab the Rex, manipulate its movement, move it around, and in my eyes would give it the advantage and make it the stronger animal. That would mean then that the Rex is the alpha predator of its own territory on the island, but not in the center. The Rex potentially knows this, and that's why it's so comfortable in its own territory and not in the D-Rex's territory. Because perhaps it knows the D-Rex doesn't venture out. Remember, this island has been operational for what, 15 odd years by the time the D-Rex was cloned? Which was sometime in 2010, and Rebirth takes place in 2027. So there is no way that Rex and that D-Rex wouldn't have come into contact at some point and found out who the alpha was. And let me just share with you that planned ending. You see, it would have the T-Rex arrive to save the human characters and fight the D-Rex, very much like the ending of Dominion, eventually winning on its own with no help. So what I just said is likely completely wrong. If they planned this entire scene and the T-Rex beating the D-Rex on his own, that would mean this T-Rex is the alpha predator of the island. Meaning, if they came into contact, which they likely did, the T-Rex has already won. It didn't kill the D-Rex, it would explain some of the scars on the D-Rex we see as well. They fought, the T-Rex won, and they've decided they're not going to come into contact again. Very much like when we see the Giga versus the T-Rex in Biosense Valley. They fight, Giga wins, T-Rex moves on, knowing it's not the alpha predator. Same thing would have happened here with the T-Rex and the D-Rex, which to me definitely signifies it's the strongest T-Rex yet. Look at Rexy. She had to have help to beat the Indominus Rex. She had to have help to beat the Giganotosaurus. She just about beat the Velociraptors in the original Jurassic Park. And I hate to bring it up, let's look at the T-Rex in Jurassic Park 3, obliterated by the Spinosaurus. Now hey, I'm not a T-Rex hater. Rexy is one of my favorites in the entire franchise. And I did a video on her last week, and Blue with their grim fates, to be honest. So I recommend watching that after this. But what I'm trying to say here is this T-Rex in Rebirth took the D-Rex on its own. But how would it fare against the Indominus? How would it fare against the Jurassic Park 3 Spinosaurus? Personally, I think it would likely beat the Spino because of the sheer size, but in all honesty, I think it would have a hard time beating the Indominus. I believe the Indominus was the ultimate predator we've seen in the Jurassic Park franchise. But what do you think? Is Rebirth's T-Rex the strongest of them all, or is Rexy still the undisputed queen of Jurassic? Let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to hit that like button just below and hit subscribe. I release a video like this every single week. Subscribe so you don't miss it. Oh, and don't forget to hype the video. Massive thanks to the InGen team who are on screen now: DVM Wannabe 1018, Joseph Frost Ghost, and Zarkadian. And if you want to become a member, you get a chance to see these videos early. And if you came across Ember the T-Rex out in the open, could your day get any worse? You bet Jurassic can. Catch you later.